people showed up. Typically when I say I do pronunciation, people are like, what? Okay, fair enough. So that's pretty cool. Well, as you can see, this is about connected speech and about how to implement it. There are just about 5 sort of topics. First, I'm going to tell you a bit about my background.
Can you use a microphone, please?
I don't know. I'm going to try to speak up. First, I'm going to discuss my background, or mention a bit of anecdote here. I'm going to discuss what the term approach means in a pronunciation context, for example. Which didactic principles underlie this approach. How can we design the syllabus? And finally, which kinds of materials can we use? So how can we design those materials? Well, before I do my own anecdote, J.D. Brown from the University of Hawaii, you might know the guy. He's publishing a book later this year and hopefully one more next year. He shares an anecdote in his, well, the manuscript to his upcoming book. And he says when he taught English in China in the 1980s, one day one of his students asked him, JD, why is it that I can understand you in class, that I can understand you talking to other American teachers? Well, that's a pretty strong point. And his conclusion was connected speech makes a difference. For me personally, back in 2008 I started teaching, and one of my first classes was a CIE preparation class, so I thought, well, advanced students, you know, let's do some cool stuff. Let's bring in authentic video materials. And I did that. I designed a nice task-based lesson around this, relationships, audio samples, cool stuff. And I tried this and it didn't work out at all. And it was like students reported comprehension rates of 20 to 30%. So I was like, how can that be? The audio recordings in the course book are a lot more difficult, lexically. Later I tried this with a B1 class, a B2 class, more guidance, still no chance, 10, 20% comprehension rate. And I also felt the decisive factor is connected speech. Now, next step, I tried to find materials, but there are some bits and pieces here and there, but nothing really systematic, hard to use. And when you get further into this, you find that many papers call for a systematic approach and for practical materials. So I thought, well, let's work on that a bit. Yeah, what do I mean by approach? Well, you know this from stuff like the communicative approach and things like that. There is views of language, views of learning, and views of how language constituents interlock. That is syllabus design, right? This can also be applied to language-focused approaches, like the lexical approach, right? You know that. How does that work in pronunciation? Well, you know, many years ago, in the early days of pronunciation teaching, like 30 years ago, people preferred segmental approaches. Then research showed that doesn't really work out too well. We need to focus on prosody. I suppose the basic model is what, you know, the way Gilbert shows it, going from thought groups to focus word, nuclear stress to sentence stress, rhythm, up to the peak vowel in a stress content word. But the way this is taught, I talked to Russell about this just a minute ago, the way this is taught is rather unsystematic most of the time, just imitating pitch counters without really understanding the rules behind this. So various people have proposed different alternatives. One is Sheila Flores in Argentina, focusing on rhythm. She calls this the rhythmical approach. She says what is most important, especially in her context, is syllable length, duration, followed by reduction, linking. What is less important are things like intonation and vowels and consonants, which is a little bit provocative, maybe. My approach more or less looks like this. I put connected speech in the center. It's the most important thing, the product of everything. And rhythm is a bit of an overarching concept that conditions connected speech. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let's look at this. You've probably seen this. You can do this with students like, you know, kids pat dogs, the kids pat the dogs, etc. What do you notice? Well, the same amount of time passes, bam, that's rhythm. Fair enough. Now, how do we do this in something like the kids might have been patting the dogs? You can't say this, but we call this a rhythmical interval or a rhythmical foot, if you will. How can we say this in a way that this takes the same amount of time to say than that? Connected speech. There we go. Might have becomes might have. So what we do, we delete the H, we reduce the vowel to schwa, and at least in American English, once the T emerges into vocabulary, we have a flap. And might have been suddenly is, you know, makes the rhythmical pattern maintainable, right? So rhythm conditions connected speech. That's a good point. Now, prominence is important, nuclear stress. By the way, I distinguish intonation from prominence. Some authors have done this. Intonation, by intonation, I mean utterance final pitched movements, terminal junctures. Prominence is important. In this case, we would probably have dogs, or maybe kids in a more marked sentence. The kids would have been having the dogs, longer and more pitched. Word stress, of course, is important. Positional variation, for example, vowel length. Vowels adjacent to a voiceless or a voiced consonant. But vowel quality, terminal junctures, they're not that significant really. For comprehension, for production, also the lingua franca core would argue for this.
Sascha,
Yep.
could I just ask for you to reiterate the difference between word stress and prominence?
Right.
Confusing.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Word stress is the inherent stress of a word. Intonation name is stressed. Whereas prominence is the primary focus word of a sentence, prosodically speaking. Thank you. Yeah. The primary focus word of a thought group, a tone unit. Okay. That's pretty much the general idea. I could say more about this, but it's a teaching conference, not a phonology conference, so I'll keep it here. How do we teach this? Well, that's a basic focus on forms model you've seen for grammar teaching. Now, pronunciation is a little bit more sophisticated. It's also Mercy has developed that. We all know analysis, guided practice, cognitive practice, and grammar teaching. In pronunciation, we pretty much need 2 more steps. The first is listening comprehension. It's incredibly frustrating to ask students to produce something they can't even orally discriminate. Say rhythm. What is rhythm? Certain pitch levels. Maybe they have certain vowel qualities. Can we even hear this? So that's a strong point to start with, which of course can be combined with analysis. Also controlled practice. Mark argued for that just a second ago. In order to be able to perceive something, producing it makes it a lot easier than just getting input and keeping it there. This sounds boring, but we can, devise nice little activities to do this that are more or less interactive, that can be fun. And of course, we can use what can be called a patchwork approach. That means you do a bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of that, bring in another topic, again, use certain elements, and then practice this in a larger communicative setting. That can work too, of course. Now that's nothing new to most, I suppose. Many people say, or many teachers report that it's easy to teach grammar, to teach semantics, but pronunciation somehow seems to be different. Well, we have these nice little concepts, meaning and usage. We all know this from grammar, from lexis. How do we do this in pronunciation? That's maybe less obvious. I suppose in pronunciation we can speak of rules, patterns, and distribution. Let's take vowel plus vowel linking. We can give students lists of words, have them compound them. Give students possible words for collocation, have them produce collocations out of these words, so that this kind of linking emerges. Have them work out the rules themselves if they're more advanced. That's a distribution, that's a pattern, but that's meaningful. Producing collocations, producing compounds, we can use a meaning-focused activity here to introduce such connected speech. We don't have to say that's the rules, live with that. Collocation and chunking, we know this from the lexical approach, and Lexis, that's quite obvious. How do we chunk pronunciation? What is collocation? What is a collocation in pronunciation? I would say thought groups, rhythmical intervals. What we had before might have been. Well, if that isn't the chunk, then what is? The kids might have been patting the dogs, might have been patting. That's a pronunciation chunk, I'd say, and students love this. Once you point out that might have been the things that they hear that they can't maybe comprehend, that's a chunk, and that language is built out of these rhythmical intervals. And in these rhythmical intervals, words go together, building phonological units. That's quite an enlightening idea, really. So that's quite helpful. So the chunking principle works for lexis, it also works for pronunciation. Authentic discourse context. Well, this might be harder for things like vowel plus vowel linking, but there are many intonation points that apply to this, or that can be made applicable here. It's a continuation rise. Describing the city tour, this will necessitate describing many or listing many individual aspects. First, when I was in Edinburgh, I went to the castle and at the end, right? There can be discourse context here. Interaction and problem solving. Well, as Michael Swan says, there's more to language than word language. We can do some intellectual topic here. Give students lots and lots of little materials and have them work out the connected speech processes. This can be fun, this can be quite enjoyable. And in the course of doing this, they interact, they talk, they practice fluency, and they also produce the target forms. So if a task is well designed, as I will show you in a second in the materials, this can be quite fun. Maybe a little thing here, focus on forms is not all that fashionable these days in the age of task-based learning and all that, right? It can be helpful, especially for advanced learners. Rob Alice also says in advanced learners, well, they are fluent. So, here we can start. I've tried this also with A1 students as a component, as part of a larger ESOL or EFL syllabus, which has also worked quite well. So, some focus on forms once in a while, or say at university or in advanced classes, can be quite helpful. Now, how do we implement that? On a theoretical basis, I think there are 4 larger units, so to speak. There's the prosodic groundwork, and that's really important. When I told a colleague some time ago that I'm researching connected speech, or teaching connected speech, he was like, how on earth can you teach connected speech? There are a billion different rules, they are so difficult to understand, even for university people. How do we do this in class? And, well, we talked about this just a second ago. How do we teach all these things? One point is starting with prosody. Prosody makes connected speech more or less logical. If students have a sound understanding of rhythm, of sentence stress, of prominence, of thought groups, of how language chunks up in these things, connected speech suddenly becomes more or less logical. And in the course of teaching this, they will encounter connected speech. Things will come up, like in the might have been, as one example out of 1,000 possible ones. These things come up. At that stage, I don't teach the rules yet, but students come across the concepts. They build a bit of awareness. You can do shadow reading activities. So by the time that's completed, they are totally ready. They are totally primed, as we say, right, for connected speech. So the second phase is, well, still there are 500 billion different rules, right, so to speak. What do we do with that? I think there are 3 larger concepts we can use. Call in the simulation, deletion, and linking. And we can subsume the rest under these larger headings. Let's take deletion. Anti-cluster reduction, Toronto, international winner. Normal cluster reduction, question, facts, action. Pronouns, deletion in pronouns, taken, gutter. Syncope, chocolate, evening, laboratory, right? All this is in the end deletion. And if the topic is deletion and you devise a bit of a patchwork framework with deletion topics, this suddenly starts to become logical. Which is easier than saying, well, there are 500 rules, let's start. Rule 1, rule 2, rule 3, etc., right? The same with linking, flapping, regressive simulation. Well, these things happen as a linking process. It can be done, right? En garde, in peace. His shirt, these things. That's linking between 2 words. And if it's a larger unit, if prosody was established before, this suddenly becomes learnable. I've tried this empirically in 3 different contexts. Once with the university group, pre-service teachers in training, at a private institution with C1 students, also in an intensive course on pronunciation, and as part of a larger EFL syllabus with beginning learners. And it's worked really well in all of these contexts. In the university group, some of them achieved native-like pronunciation, which is what they wanted. So that was pretty nice. With the A1 students, some now sound like your typical sort of B2 student, which is quite fascinating really. Not all of them, but for some it worked really well. So this seems to be sort of psychologically conducive, let's call it. Sounds, well, they are there. They can be sort of interspersed. Right, that's pretty much the theoretical concept here. Now I'm going to show you some materials. Sensitization is important. Students have to be able to actually hear all these connected speech processes. That's meaningful because obviously this is hard to hear. We don't focus on that, that's the whole point. After having done all the prosody, I've created a corpus of 25 scenes from TV shows. So as a first starting activity, you could tell students, listen to all that stuff, write down phrases that have connected speech processes. By the time they don't know the rules, but they know there's something there. Let's write the words down. Later on, discuss, compare this, etc. And the second stage, you could give them certain very simple rules, sounds merging, places of linking, deletion, whatever that is, right? Vowel reduction. And then, where do these things occur in the things you wrote down? Listen again. Of course, you can give them transcriptions later on to see, listen again, connected speech happens here. Just to see again which things were used in the samples. Let me give you 3 samples here.
Excuse me, could you direct me to the conference room, please?
Sure, it's down the hall.
What do we get? Excuse me, could you? Excuse me, could you?
She's already on an antidepressant. She knows better than to mix it with anything.
She has antidepressants?
She's
That's hard for students.
clinical depression for 2 years.
Hannah's an antidepressant. She said. She said she has had. She said. Hannah's nana. Hannah's nana. Right. Hannah is on anti. That's hard stuff. But listening to it like that, focusing on that, can be quite helpful. There are also TV shows students know, students like.
I told them Dr. Cox was going to take a leave of absence due to problems at home. Should anyone ask, you beat him.
Beat him. Got it.
Beat him, got it. I told them, beat him, got it. So focusing on things like that with a certain corpus of samples, and in some samples there are lots and lots of different things, is a pretty nice technique. So students can compare it. The students can then work out the citation form, compare the citation form with the weak form, work out simple rules, just as a sensitization kind of activity. Let's take some individual examples. This is developed for advanced learners, very advanced learners. So here I'm linking coalescent simulation with a simulation within words. Issue becoming issue. Just like, well, close your eyes. Becoming this year. Issue this year. Right? You can link issue to this year. This makes it more tangible. Because issue they know. They wouldn't necessarily say issue, or they are aware of the pronunciation of issue like that. So that makes it a bit more natural. You can go on to simpler questions, information about school, college. Why did you do that? Why didn't you do that, etc. To more free practice activities. Social interaction. And living with other people, roommates, neighbors, parents, bosses, professors, what have you. Is there anything that annoys you? How would you tell the person about that? Discuss this with a friend first of all. I want to talk to that guy, I don't know how to handle that, etc. And of course you can take this as a start, as a starter, or as part of a larger activity on social interaction, right, in a larger ESOL syllabus. So this makes it a bit more meaningful than just pattern drills and things, right? Let's take regressive simulation. You can have little discovery things. Good boy, his shirt, pet kitten. How do we link this? Well, once students know what assimilation is from coalescent simulation, making similar, right, regressive, backwards. Once you know it's backwards, it's getting similar, what can you possibly do? Students in pairs and groups can figure this out relatively well. In Kansas, good girl, one shadow. You can do little drills like this if you want to, if it's helpful for students. Fill in the gap. I can play with can, right? There has to be a can in the word. I can play the guitar. I can cook French food. And from there you can go on to a larger thing like discussing hobbies, activities. I like to do martial arts, that's me. Some people like to cook. I can make brownies, but I can't make cream tarts. It can be a bit more guided here, bringing in a bit of sentence stress. Then you can have a larger unit on hobbies, on activities, on abilities, right? So this can be part of all this. Maybe one more. Sounds. Well, okay, once you focus on sounds, you notice basic stuff like, what's the word in the picture? Fortress, core, word, car, etc. There are 3 categories here, or, are, right? Or, in British English, it's equally important to do this. Brainstorm a list of words with words in these 3 categories, or, are. Then you can bring in a totally different thing. You're listening to a dialogue, who's Bob, what happened to him, what could be the background of these events. In the dialogue, which they can read later, there are lots and lots of idioms and phrasal words. To charge top dollar, sharp as a tack. What is something? Sharp, dollar, charge, these sounds occur in these idioms and phrasal verbs. Idioms and phrasal verbs, again, are really interesting, are really important, and give us a nice bit of content here. So figure out the meanings of the phrasal verbs, discuss them, produce a story with the idioms and phrasal verbs, which are about business and something not going well. Bring in the brainstorm list of words, make a story of your own, tell the story, then retell the one you like most once you listen to all of them, right? This gets you to use all these sounds in various ways, in a more contextualized manner, I'd say. Yeah, that's some materials here. I had to wrap this a little bit, but that's more or less what I was going to say. If you would like a handout or any more materials, you can email me. So I hope this gave you a bit of an idea of how to make this whole large topic a bit more tangible, a bit more feasible. I've tried it, it worked for me. Are there any questions?
Could you recommend any software or any apps that might help for connected speech? Raising awareness?
Sorry. When do you know any apps, any software?
Yeah, come to Richard's talk later. Richard was talking about
These TV scenes, I mean, I've done this myself really. You know, students know these things, right? They run in probably Russian stuff, German stuff, Polish stuff, what have you. You can get the DVD box and cut out certain scenes. You know, it's quite helpful. I use Windows, the Windows thingy. It's called Windows Movie Maker. Yeah. It's quite easy to handle. Yeah.
I found it interesting you said that you tried it with our students and with the A2 level. Because when you kept saying, oh, just simple rules, still I thought that some of the meta language would be a bit hard for an A2 level. So did you like phrase the things differently, or did you, I mean, how did you do that with the lower level?
Good point, yeah. But I pretty much explained the course book here, because these activities are too advanced, obviously. Yeah. But in the course books, well, I use authentic course books. Downstairs, Macmillan, Open Mind, you have the freedom to choose your own course book. There are, you know, things from 2010, 2011 with authentic listening materials, and there's stuff like wanna or what do you comes up, right? Instead of what do you, and this classical activity, what do you do tonight, or whatever. No, what do you do? What are you gonna do? I mean, this occurs in more, you know, more contemporary course books too. And if it doesn't, you can point out that it might be said like that in the real world. And I use this as a starting point. Also, say there is a survey. There are words, you know, take the thing that applies to you. Discuss rules of word stress with that. There is a dialogue written down or in the listening prominence, sentence stress, terminal junctures, if you will. So yeah, I pretty much use the course book and do it like that. What do the people in the recording say, and how else could it be?
I mean, when you're explaining like the terminal junction, obviously you didn't use this word, right?
Right. Okay, well, I teach in a monolingual context, so I can explain it in German if I want to. Yeah. Okay, of course, in a multilingual context, that's going to be a bit more tricky. But the IPA script, actually, is a little bit logical. I've used this also with lower level learners. I mean, this je symbol, you know, it kind of reflects the sound a little bit in a way. And to say, well, there's this don't you, transcribing them, you see, that's the individual sounds. That can also be quite helpful. And to stress patterns, right, you can draw this in, you know, dots like Mark Hancock likes to use, or these thingies. So see, there is a stress valley, right? You can draw a valley. See, there is a stress valley. And here's this valley, and now the je sounding word. It's using the symbol of the je. Yeah.
How do you measure the progress of your students, if you do? Have you got any idea about
You mean in empirical research or just in class?
in class?
Well, in class, I don't know, you observe it in the end. I've never done this systematically. In empirical research, I've developed coding schemes for quantitative studies. We can talk about this, it's a big thing, obviously. But also, accent ratings of extemporaneous speech for quantitative studies and coding schemes for qualitative studies. But that's a really big topic.
And in class, it's just, you just observe the students' progress.
Right. I mean, you see this in the course of time. Are they using it spontaneously? You know, once you did this like 2 lessons ago or something. And also a general comprehensibility, intelligibility is an issue, right? If you notice there's an A1 learner who is so wonderfully comprehensible, And then you listen carefully and notice, well, he's using linking here, he's using nuclear stress there. That's pretty much how I do it, more impressionistically.
I have a question. You teach English in Germany?
Yeah, I do.
And do this connected speech phenomena happen also in Germany?
No.
Do you nothing similar at all?
No, not like that. Rhythm is a little bit similar,
Yeah.
but empirical studies have shown that German rhythm is different to English rhythm. It's both stress type, but in a different way. But connected speech is different, it is. But good point, yeah. Something in the back? Yeah.
Do you have any references that we can just
Yeah,
read
send
on?
me an email. I'll give you a handout with empirical studies and books and things. Yeah.
Okay.
We hope you enjoyed watching this video. You can watch more videos on www.emw-edu.com. Don't forget like and share. Bye.